you travel, do you take art supplies with you? Because I do. And as a matter of fact, for about the last year, I've been trying to do a complete sketchbook for every trip that I've gone on, and this is my Scotland sketchbook that I finally just finished. Now, I meant to get this done a lot sooner, but I have a lot of projects, so I was so relieved to finally get this done because I started this in March of this year. So on the very first page, I wanted to actually start with kind of the feeling that caused this trip. I love Colorado, I love the scenes, but during the winter, things get really gray and brown, and so I just wanted to go somewhere and see something new. So we booked a trip to Scotland because it's been on our list for quite a while. And as a matter of fact, part of the reason that I booked it is that I expected it to be really green and a little magical, because Scotland's national animal is actually the unicorn, and this goofy guy, we saw him everywhere within the castles. Now, I actually wish that I'd done a little less about the beginning of the adventure, but I started this on the plane and I wanted to try to do some simple kind of sketching of people because that is not my strong suit, and I try to stretch myself when I make these sketchbooks. All right, now into the actual Scotland content. So I really enjoyed learning about, at Stirling's Castle, this ochre great hall. It was just so interesting, and I had fun playing with the different textures. I liked how this one turned out. I love patterns, so of course I had to do some of the cobblestone or the masonry walls that were actually at the castles. And after we did some sightseeing on castles, we went up to Oban, and this was the view from our room. This was such a quaint and peaceful, just lovely town. Again, the view from our room, this was at night though, because when we first checked in, it was dark, and when we looked out, the light was just barely glowing. It was so pretty. And then we went to this really cute seafood restaurant, and this restaurant even had like names if they knew the fishermen that went out to catch them. It was really cute. Again, Oban, we went up to the top of this hill for this beautiful view. We took this little tiny ferry over to the island of Kerala, and I wanted to see Highland cows, and we did. So I had to show that. I really enjoyed the ferry ride from Kerala. It was just so serene, and we were the only people on this little tiny ferry, and it was so cute. Now, in my sketchbooks, I like to sometimes take little breaks in them because some of them are more ambitious, and if everything's really ambitious, then I get unmotivated. So this was actually based on a tile pattern. So I just made the tile pattern that we saw, and then I wrote down some of the things that I wanted to remember from the trip. After Oban, we drove up to Glencoe to do a little bit of hiking, and that place is just magical. We stayed at kind of a fancy hotel in the countryside, and it was really pretty there, just being able to see out into all the fields, and I thought that this building was really pretty. One of the things that I absolutely loved in Scotland was we went during springtime and there were daffodils everywhere. Like, you'd just be driving. Daffodils, daffodils, daffodils. We got some fancy drinks one night and I thought that the lighting was just really cool. This one was hard for me to do, but I really like how this turned out. You might recognize this one because we did this one together. Some more cobblestones because, again, I'm a pattern girly. I loved seeing all the sheep in the countryside. I think they're so cute. Now, we spent the last couple nights in Edinburgh, and at this point of the trip, I wasn't feeling so well. I think I actually got food poisoning from a fancy restaurant, and so I was taking it easy. But we really lucked out. We had this gorgeous view from our room, and when I was up early in the morning, everything was kind of in darkness, but there was all this beautiful sunrise, so that was... I really enjoyed that, even though I had to spend most of the time in bed. But in good news, I did manage to feel better for at least a few hours before we finally had to leave the city, and so we got to go up and see the castle and things like that, and it was really neat to see. This is the street that we stayed on. It's just so magical and beautiful, and I loved all the colors. And then I had to commemorate this. This is tile that I absolutely fell in love with, but I think this is at the restaurant where I got food poisoning. And anyways, so now it's in here, and this tile pattern will always remind me of that. I still think it's a really neat pattern. And we had so much fun on this trip, but I think one of my favorite things was just driving and hiking through Glencoe because it was just so beautiful. It kind of reminded me of a combination of Colorado and Iceland together, so it was perfect. Another night scene from the view from our hotel when I was kind of hanging out in bed. And then probably the very best thing about Scotland was just how warm and friendly all the people were. We had so much fun just joking around with people, and I absolutely loved it, and I do want to go back someday and hopefully not get food poisoning from a fancy restaurant again. Now, this took me a lot longer than I wanted it to finish, but I'm so glad that I did finish it, and now I have this lovely little memory that I can look through at any time I want to remember our trip to Scotland.